weekend. It is Monday morning, October the 3rd. I'm Rob Finnerty.
And I'm Allison Maloney. Here are some of the stories we're following for you today.
A new poll shows that Republicans have cut into Democrats' lead when it comes to Latino voters dating back to the 2018 midterm cycle. How does this affect the midterms now just 36 days away? We'll break it all down.
Plus, Ukrainian forces reportedly captured towns in the southern part of the country, while one former national security advisor warns the world should take Putin's nuclear threat seriously.
The Supreme Court legitimacy is on the line. We all know that. With a 6-3 conservative majority, we don't know what damage they will do to our democracy.
Okay, strong comments there. A new Supreme Court session will begin today as the court welcomes in a new judge. While some on the left question the legitimacy of the highest court in the land, as you just heard, we're going to break down what we can expect this term with constitutional attorney Amir Benno coming up in just a little bit. But first, Hurricane Ian politics continued over the weekend in a big way. Take a listen.
Why do you stand behind Lee County's decision to not have that mandatory evacuation until the day before the storm?
Well, where was your industry station when the storm hit? Were you guys in Lee County? No, you were in Tampa. So that's, they were following the weather track, and they had to make decisions based on that. But, 72 hours, they weren't even in the cone. 48 hours, they were on the periphery. So you got to make the decisions the best you can.
By the way, he was totally accurate there. If you look at the cone on Monday, Tampa was going to take a direct hit. Lee County, which is Fort Myers, Cape Coral, that area that was hit so hard, it was on the outside, the far outside of the cone in the south of where the storm was. Yeah. This is what happens with these hurricanes. The problem is you can't evacuate a whole state. No. It happened with Hurricane Michael in 2018, too. Looked like it was going to hit the Big Bend area, just north of Tampa, Cedar Key, that area. It went right up into the Panhandle.
Yeah, he was spot on with that answer, too, to that reporter.
He's always ready because he knows it's coming. All right, for more, let's welcome in commentary editor for the Washington Times, Newsmax contributor Kelly Sadler, and former Trump campaign aide, also a Newsmax contributor, Rick Gates. Good morning. Great to have you both on. Kelly, long time no see. I feel like I just saw you on Saturday here on Newsmax getting ready for the Trump rally. A lot of that this weekend. Basically, the media narrative over the weekend is that Ron DeSantis is responsible for all human suffering in the state of Florida. He's also responsible for Hurricane Ian. If you watch The View, Kelly, it was karma. This was karma.
Florida never gets hurricanes. I don't know what they're talking about. Listen, Ron DeSantis is one of the top Republican governors in the country. He's a prospect for the 2024 presidential campaign. The media is going to go after him as ferociously as they can, and they did over the weekend, blaming him for Lee County's decision not to evacuate sooner, going after, the senators, Florida, Rubio, as well as Scott, this weekend, asking if Ron DeSantis as a lawmaker didn't want to approve aid for Hurricane Sandy, a superstorm Sandy, so why should Florida get aid for Hurricane Ian? These hits are going to keep coming, but Ron DeSantis is well prepared for them and always has the right answers to give back to the faces of these reporters.
Yeah, Kelly, you're so right. Rick, we knew this was going to happen, right? We knew that they would blame Hurricane Ian on climate change. They then attacked Ron DeSantis, saying he's giving too many press conferences. This must mean this is all politics. He's running on a campaign. Now they're saying that they didn't evacuate that one county. They obviously are Democrats are very concerned that Ron DeSantis could run. Yet, though everything shifted, this really should have been about search and rescue. This should have been about what people are needing in Florida. Yet the media completely spun it, and it's all politics.
Yeah, and if you look at what Ron DeSantis did over the weekend, he didn't, push back on Biden. He kind of embraced the help from the federal government. He was gracious in his comments. He knows that the important thing right now is to help the people of Florida, because ultimately, whether it's political or non-political, he's going to be judged on that. And every action that he takes is important. And that's why you're seeing him out in the press. Guess what? If he wasn't in the press, he'd be criticized for not, doing enough press conferences, giving people information.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Rick. So I expected this Friday going into the weekend. This is really what I was watching for heading into the weekend was this media narrative all around climate change and Ron DeSantis and his mismanagement, his alleged mismanagement of this hurricane. But here's the thing. If you live in Florida, Kelly, to your point, they're no strangers to hurricanes down there, and people do not like evacuating. They don't like being told they have to evacuate. So yes, that's political. And under 40 days from the midterms, I'm sure that DeSantis said, look, we don't need to evacuate counties where this storm's not going to hit. Of course, that can change. But so what does that mean? Do you want to evacuate? Florida is a massive state. Rick, so for all future storms, would the left be happy if we just evacuate every county in Florida?
Well, they'd only be happy if it was in the face of a midterm, because that's exactly what Kelly referred to earlier. Is they want to place blame on a Republican, a high-ranking Republican, somebody that will likely be a presidential contender, whether in 2024 or moving forward. And again, it's about Ron DeSantis's decisions and judgment. And so far, that has been, fantastic in the face of what Democrats are going to try to do. So every opportunity they have, they will try to tear him down.
Yeah, Kelly, Kamala Harris, too, saying, those who should get aid, it should be based on equity. What do you make of that?
The definition of discrimination,
she was asked about that over the weekend,
yeah.
and she didn't really have a response.
Well, that's racist, right? I mean, aid should be given to those who need it, regardless of their skin color. And this was Kamala Harris virtue signaling, trying to say the right thing. And of course, coming off she was completely wrong. I mean, even the FEMA director said that those that were impacted the most by this storm are the first ones that will receive this aid. It doesn't matter if you are low income, high income, Black, white, Hispanic. It's regardless.
Well, the storm, Kelly's not discriminating. If Hurricane Ian hit dark blue Miami-Dade County on the other side of Florida, it would be a whole different story. But the hurricane doesn't discriminate where it hits, okay? It just hits somewhere, and then we've got to deal with the aftermath. The other part of this whole thing, and I thought this was fascinating, I lived in Florida for 5 years, covered a lot of these things. I never heard about who voted for prior hurricane aid packages, but a lot of people have criticized Ron DeSantis for, back in 2012, not voting for the, when he was in the House, member of Congress, not voting for the Hurricane Sandy relief package. Marco Rubio was a no vote on that as well. Take a listen.
After Hurricane Sandy hit northeastern states in 2012, you voted no on a $50 billion relief package. I know you supported a smaller version, but why should other senators vote for relief for your state when you didn't vote for a package to help theirs?
Oh, I've always voted for hurricane and disaster relief. I've even voted for it without pay-fors. What I didn't vote for in Sandy is because they had included things like a roof for a museum in Washington, D.C., for fisheries in Alaska. It had been loaded up with a bunch of things that had nothing to do with disaster relief.
All right, Kelly, just your take on that. By the way, the part they don't say is that a week after that, they got rid of all the pork that was stuffed into that bill. The House voted, it passed overwhelmingly. The Senate then voted, it passed overwhelmingly, and it was on the president's desk, and it made its way to the people of the tri-state area that needed it most early in 2013. That part of the narrative we did not hear.
No, I mean, and it's totally intentional, right, Rob? Like, they want to nail these Republicans on some sort of hypocrisy, and or they want Democrats to load up a Florida aid bill with a bunch of pork and force these Republicans to vote for it or vote on it. This is absolutely ridiculous. Rubio and Scott and Governor DeSantis have been very clear that they're going to need federal aid, and they need that federal aid to be as clean, put in a clean bill so that it can pass. And Rubio and Scott and DeSantis, when DeSantis was in Congress, voted for aid, for other natural disasters that happen throughout the country.
Rick, your take on this?
Yeah, I think this is politics at its worst. The people that need the aid, that need the help, they should be the ones to get it. And any type of attempt to put, additional projects on these bills is just bad for everybody. And no doubt, guys like Marco Rubio and Rick Scott, they will be blamed if they vote against this bill, if it has a lot of, pork barrel politics in it. So hopefully they will be able to get that message out, because it is key. Nobody wants to report the other side of it.
All right, one final angle that we heard a lot about over the weekend was the climate change narrative. Take a listen to a reporter on Face the Nation.
I think we have to look at this in the context of climate change, and we should say first off that climate change doesn't cause a hurricane to happen, but scientists increasingly believe that climate change is making hurricanes stronger and more destructive. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It's that the ocean waters are much warmer than they used to be, and warm ocean water is rocket fuel for a hurricane. So when one of these storms passes over this warm water, it just turbocharges this thing, and it's what they call rapid intensification.
which is not a new term, by the way, when it comes to hurricanes, rapid intensification. That term has been around for a long, long time. Kelly, we've had 2 hurricanes this year. It's one of the least active Atlantic hurricane seasons we've ever seen on record. 2 hurricanes, Fiona 2 weeks ago, Puerto Rico, and Hurricane Ian last week in Florida. Compare that to 2005, so you got to go back 17 years. 28 named storms in the Atlantic hurricane season. But yet they're still saying this is a result of climate change.
Well, it's because that's the narrative that they want to take into the, midterm elections, right? They just passed a huge climate change bill. They want to give the president credit for that. The mainstream media is no longer objective. They're activists. They're Democratic activists. There is absolutely no statistical evidence that hurricanes are a result of climate change and that they're intensifying and that there's more of them than there ever was historically. There's absolutely zero scientific evidence proving that case, but they're going to push that narrative forward no matter what because they believe it helps Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll stay on top of this story. Panel, we'll do it again. Top of the hour. Kelly Sadler, Rick Gates, thank you. Let's welcome Alex Kramer back in. She's got a look at headlines. Alex, good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Yeah, a lot of stories we're following for everybody. First, president in 2024 with the help of her husband, former President Bill Clinton. Now, in an interview, the former president warned Democrats against Biden's border crisis, that there is a limit to taking in migrants before severe disruption in the United States. And according to Newsmax's very own Dick Morris, who also served as a former aide to Bill Clinton, this criticism of open borders is directly out of the Morris playbook.
Now Hillary is biding her time until November's congressional elections. And she and Bill know that the Republicans are going to take both houses. And then Hillary's going to come back and she's going to say, see what happens when you go too far left? These are both designed to position Hillary as a centrist, as a realist, and to capitalize on the defeat of the Democrats in the by-election.
And many are agreeing with Morris, saying that he's going after votes for Hillary, focusing on people who moved away from the Democratic Party because of the aggressive left policies. But Hillary recently made controversial comments comparing Trump supporters to Nazi Germany, showing how divisive she is with the Republican vote. And after so much back and forth of her denying a 2024 run, only to keep heavy presence in the media, people are seemingly becoming annoyed by her. But along with the Hillary Clinton presidential bid comes the prediction of Trump's run that has this user saying, imagine 2024's Trump versus Hillary again, LOL.
Vladimir Putin, I think before he does some nuclear demonstration, could very well attack some NATO distribution point, because that's who he's blaming. He's blaming NATO, the U.S., our allies, for supplying Ukraine with the weaponry that's allowed Ukraine to be so effective. So I think we need to start thinking through what's the response going to be if he attacks an airport in Poland or a train station on the border with Poland, and NATO forces that are embedded there to help with the distribution, not in combat, are killed or injured. And I think that's going to be a real fork in the road for the alliance.
All right, it is day 222 of the war in Ukraine. Some major news out of Denmark this morning. The Nord Stream 1 pipeline has apparently stopped leaking. And as you just heard Florida Senator Marco Rubio talking about an attack on NATO territory, he says that is very much on the table right now. For more on all this, let's welcome in retired Air Force Brigadier General and Newsmax contributor Blaine Holt. General, good morning. Happy Monday. Good to see you.
Happy Monday.
So, General, the Nord Stream pipeline apparently has stopped leaking after the damage from a week ago. What does that mean?
I think that just means to clean up valves, midstream pipeline type things that the Russians have to actually cut the artery and turn it off, and that's good news. I mean, that's actually encouraging.
But they're not going to flip the switch on the spigot there and turn it back on anytime soon.
No, my understanding over the weekend is that to get the proper equipment in there to repair both pipelines could take as late as May, because you're getting into sea states and weather patterns in the Baltic that are very, very tough to deal with anyway. So it may take quite some time.
Okay, we just played a soundbite from Marco Rubio, Florida Senator. He was on a lot of the programs yesterday. Wondering what you make of that. I'm not wild about the term saber rattling because I do think there's some truth to what he's saying. And apparently a top Putin ally over the weekend said that he is encouraging Vladimir Putin to use tactical nuclear weapons. What do you make of that?
Golly, let's back up 7 months. And if we could play this broadcast then, wouldn't we be shocked at the language we're using about tactical nukes, nuclear weapons, World War III? We really are in a very bad place, absent diplomacy, which I don't see any. And to Senator Rubio's point, NATO war planners and American war planners at U.S. European Command, they have been planning for decades for all eventualities. So it's not we start to plan in an attack scenario on Poland. We know very well what we'll do in those scenarios.
The New York Times took the other angle there with an article on Sunday saying Putin's threatening nuclear weapons again. Is he serious this time? The article went on to say that most experts say no, but the odds have increased. So to your point, General, maybe more than saber rattling. I want to play you a soundbite from the NATO Secretary General on Ukraine joining NATO and that possibility. Take a listen.
NATO has an open door policy, and every nation, including, of course, also Ukraine, has the right to choose its own path, including what kind of security arrangements it wants to be a part of. At the same time, any decision on membership has to be taken by consensus. All 30 allies have to agree.
General, is there any way that Ukraine is fast-tracked through the NATO application process?
Not at this time. I do appreciate the General Secretary's measured diplomatic words about what can happen. But on the technical aspects of this, let's play this out a little bit. If Ukraine were to be granted emergency membership status right now, you essentially pull the entire alliance to an Article 5 commitment, and then we have an Article 5 war going on with Russia, which is in effect the precursor to World War III. It would be far better, and I think it will happen, that Ukraine can be a NATO state one day, but not till after this conflict.
Did you hear Vladimir Putin's speech on Friday morning? We finally got it translated. A real stem winder. He accused the United States of Satanism. That's nice.
Yes.
I don't know what that means, but that was nice.
But we should get into the other elements of that speech, which are very, very chilling indeed, because he refers to the West as Anglo-Saxons. He's using historical arguments that go back to Peter the Great. He's airing every single Russian grievance that ever existed between East and West. And that does not sound like a person who is looking at ending a conflict anytime soon. In fact, it sounds like someone who's about to ratchet one up.
General, 30 seconds, and we'll get back into this a little bit later on this morning, but what are you hearing about his mental state and his inner circle?
So mental state, we can't know for sure. There's obvious measures of irrationality with the stuff that he is saying. I'm more concerned that he's actually speaking to informed things that are being said to him. The inner circle is starting to break apart, and they're getting very nervous, and we can see that with the pressure on Shoigu right now. He may be the first one to lose his job.
All right, General, when we have you back, I want to talk a little bit more about what happens if Vladimir Putin does do any of this, if he does use tactical nukes, or if he does attack a NATO country. We'll get into that in just a little bit. General Blake.
In the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
After a divisive, high-profile and sensational trial, former football star O.J. Simpson is acquitted of the brutal double murder of his estranged wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman. The epic 252-day trial was preceded by an infamous slow-speed freeway chase with a carnival-like atmosphere being captured on camera. Simpson's dream team of attorneys put the LAPD and race relations under the microscope, implying their client was framed by unscrupulous and racist police officers. And this was enough to provide reasonable doubt despite a mountain of evidence against Simpson, highlighted by a single leather glove found outside Simpson's home, which matched a glove found at the crime scene. The longest trial ever held in California ended after just 4 hours of deliberation, heard by over 140 million shocked Americans.
It's now time for your Newsmax News Minute. Well, officials in Stockton, California are offering an $85,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest in a series of homicides that are believed to be the work of a serial killer. Now, police say 5 people were shot and killed in separate incidents from July through September. All of the victims were alone and shot during hours of darkness. And Brazil's heated presidential race heads to a second-round runoff after neither candidate received more than 50% of the votes. Election results show former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva with a slight lead over incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro. 123 million Brazilians waited in long lines to cast their ballots. A runoff vote is set for October 30th. And Football Hall of Famer and TV analyst Terry Bradshaw reveals he's battled cancer twice over the past year. Now, the former Steelers quarterback says he's now cancer-free. He first battled bladder cancer after being diagnosed last November, then skin cancer in March. Now, those are just some of your headlines, but as always, for any breaking news, head to Newsmax.com and keep it right here, because another hour of Wake Up America starts right now.
Fort Myers Beach no longer exists. I mean, it'll have to be rebuilt. It'll be something different. It was a slice of old Florida that you can't recapture.
I had 4 hurricanes. We had flooding at different times, some tornadoes. And what do you learn from each one of them? I think as we go through this, we'll find out. Is there things that we could do better to make sure we don't lose people?
All right, just days after Hurricane Ian tore through parts of Florida, the state is now looking at a massive rebuild as the death toll continues to climb. Over 600,000 Floridians are still without power this morning.
Meanwhile, President Biden will travel to Puerto Rico today, where he plans to announce a $60 million spending plan to help the island 2 weeks after Hurricane Fiona.
Good morning. Welcome back into Wake Up America. Hope you had a great weekend. It is a Monday morning, October the 3rd. I'm Rob Finnerty.
And I'm Ellison Maloney. Here's some of the stories we're following for you today.
A new poll shows that Republicans have cut into Democrats' lead when it comes to Latino voters dating back to the 2018 midterm cycle. How does this affect the midterms now, just 36 days away? We'll see of the highest court in the land. We'll break it all down with a constitutional attorney coming up in just a little bit. But first, the first weekend of October come and gone. Already, today marks 8 weeks since the raid on Mar-a-Lago. New York Times writer Maggie Haberman was making the rounds this weekend. She's trying to sell a new book, which is based on conversations she had with former President Donald Trump. For more on that and a soundbite that you just have to hear, let's welcome in commentary editor for the Washington Times, Newsmax contributor Kelly Sadler, and former Trump campaign aide Rick Gates. Rick, want to play this soundbite for you. Again, Maggie Haberman. I don't know why Donald Trump gives her interviews. He seems to think to himself that somehow he's going to convince her that she'll be, friendly and that he'll win her over. It is never going to happen. But here's Maggie Haberman on Trump running again in 2024.
I think he's backed himself into a corner where he has to run. I think that he needs the protections that running for president he thinks would afford him in combating investigations that he calls a witch hunt. And it is the way that he fundraises and makes money. So much of his identity now is about being a politician. So I expect that he will run. That doesn't mean that even if he declares a candidacy that he will stay in the whole time.
A brilliant comment that was, Rick. So much of his identity now is wrapped up into being a politician. The guy was president of the United States. Okay, do people remember George Bush as owner of the Texas Rangers? No, they remember him as being a former president. Jimmy Carter, do people remember him as being a peanut farmer? No, they remember him as being a former president. Why is Donald Trump any different?
Yeah, look, Donald Trump, the one thing he doesn't want is ever be labeled a politician. This is exactly what he's been fighting against, and he'll continue to fight against it. And this is why you're seeing just this, tsunami of legal cases being orchestrated against him. It does, create a scenario where in order to move forward out of a lot of this kind of, chaos that's been created around him, that he needs to continue fighting and be perceived as fighting. And so I think that will, give credence to, him running. But a lot of what he's been able to do, talking to the American people, representing what they believe are the right issues for them, is creating that same strength within his base that will also give him the popularity and the position to be able to run again and probably win the nomination.
Yeah, Kelly, she said that he's backed in a corner. I don't know him personally, but I can't imagine former President Trump would ever feel that he's backed in a corner, and that's why he would run.
No, he's running. He's going to run. He's going to announce he's running because he's running for the American people and for the America First agenda. And you'll see he's out on the campaign trail. He's going to be in Nevada and Arizona this week. He was He was just in Michigan on Saturday. The crowds, I mean, thousands of people are still joining his movement and believe in the America First agenda that he accomplished just in 4 years. And so he needs another 4 years to get us back on the right track. I mean, just look at the immigration problem, the crisis that we're having at the southern border. Look at the inflation that we have. Mortgage rates have doubled just in a year. These are the issues that he wants to tackle, he's going to take on, and these are what all of the senatorial campaigns and gubernatorial campaigns that won his endorsement are putting forth.
Yeah, Kelly, good point. By the way, Warren, Michigan, we're talking suburban Detroit here, a county that he won in 2020, but in a state that most people say is still a blue state, even though Trump did win Michigan in 2016. This is what the New York Times is saying while all of this is playing out 36 days ahead of the midterms. The New York Times had an article over the weekend talking about gerrymandering, basically redistricting. And the article said that gerrymandering is not going to give the GOP the advantage that you might expect. And then, Kelly, way down in the middle of that article, the New York Times is speculating that Nancy Pelosi could be Speaker of the House yet again. I'm serious about this. What planet are they living on with this kind of stuff?
Again, they're Democratic activists. They're trying to suppress Republicans from going out and voting this midterm election. There is no doubt that Republicans are going to take the House in November. It's just by what majority are they going to have? Even if they just pick up 20 seats in November, they'll still have a larger majority than Newt Gingrich had in 1995 with his Contract for America. So they're going to have a huge majority. It's just a matter of how large it's going to be.
Rick, we hear all these polls, and some say don't pay attention to the polls because we saw what happened in 2016. But do you expect a red wave? Because I know months ago we said it, but there's a possibility it may not be a red wave.
Good question, Allison. Rick, do you mind if I just add to that? Because I have the same question,
Please.
But I just want to add one thing, Allison, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Are the days of, so we keep hearing about 1994, huge Republican gains, and then 2012, 2010, the first Obama midterms, where it was something like 63 seats for Republicans. Are those days over because of redistricting? Are too many districts now either really red or really blue? So we're not going to see any more of these massive pickups on the left or the right.
Look, I think, moving forward, we could possibly see those. But right now, the country is very divided. It's divided along issues. It's divided along political ideology and a whole host of other subjects. So I think as we move forward, absolutely could be potential to happen, but you're not going to see it for quite some time. I think, to Alice's question about red wave, what does it mean? This is going to be the interesting thing after the midterms is, going through the aftermath of it and determining what is a red wave. Is 10 seats, 20 seats, 50 seats a red wave? And I think the fact that the Republicans will take back the House, maybe the Senate, I think is a good indication of in a divided country of showing, in my opinion, what that red wave, could potentially mean, and that it is a solid vote for Republicans because of the issues that people feel out in America that they want to support.
All right, Rick, I'm not going to start with you this week with winners and losers of the weekend because you picked last Monday, I think. How many topics did he take, Kelly? He took every single possible topic. He was on for 45 minutes just talking about topics.
Absolutely. Yes, so I'm number one.
All right. So, winners and losers of the weekend. Kelly Sadler, we will begin with you.
Okay, Rick, this is how you do it. One winner. The one winner is EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak. If you remember, he funded gain-of-function research in the Wuhan laboratory. Well, he was just awarded another NIH grant to fund that same gain of research, but this time in Malaysia. So this is absolutely an abomination. Republicans need to look and investigate this when they win the House. But he's a winner right now. Anthony Fauci did him solid.
Wow. What kind of research, Kelly, in Malaysia? The same type of research, or?
The same sort of bat research.
Wow, interesting.
Same gain-of-function research. In terms of a loser, it's going to be the movie Bros, which was released this weekend. It was a rom-com with two gay leads. It only brought in $4 million, and now the director is blaming homophobic Americans. So if you don't go watch the movie, you're a homophobe. That's a crazy marketing strategy, but
not a bad idea by the director, though, right? That gets him so that he can now sign a deal with another movie and direct again.
Unbelievable.
Rick?
All right, I'll play by Kelly's rules today. My one winner will be the United States Coast Guard for the heroic efforts that they showed. I mean, watching some of the video of them on Sanibel Island was really just courageous and absolutely impressive. So that was really good to see. My loser, Liz Truss, who has in less than about 4 weeks decimated the British economy, and in the last 24 hours has just flip-flopped again on cutting tax rates. That is going to be a big problem for the UK moving forward.
Rick, to the Coast Guard thing, and Allison and I were talking about this morning. So Joe Biden called the Coast Guard, particularly, so Sanibel Island, and then inside Sanibel, before you get to Fort Myers, this little barrier island called Pine Island. The causeway was blown out. The little small bridge was blown out to Pine Island. The Coast Guard had to, and a lot of elderly people live out there, and they had to make all these rescues. So Joe Biden calls the Coast Guard down there and congratulates them, thanks them, which was big of him. But then on the other side of that, the vaccine mandate is still in place, and literally hundreds of Coast Guard service members down in Florida are going to lose their jobs the last day of December because of the vaccine mandate for a pandemic that Joe Biden a week ago on 60 Minutes said was over.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the person that's getting rescued is asking them if they're vaccinated during that time.
Good point.
Yeah. All right, winners and losers. Rob, go ahead.
Wait, me? No, you go. You.
Oh, okay.
You.
All right. So my loser, this happened Friday. So Friday counts as the weekend, right? Does. Okay.
Yeah.
So Nancy Pelosi, what she said on how we need the immigrants to pick the crops. I just think that was really, that was harsh. And I always go back to, if a Republican said that, can you imagine the backlash?
Right,
and my winner is my daughter, of course, because she played 9 positions in her football game. Don't ask me what they were, but they were down teammates, so she played like a ton of positions.
Wait, did she have a touchdown last week too?
She 2 weeks ago she had a touchdown.
Interception or?
No.
You need to submit the video to our team.
I
so
did. We played it.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, we did.
The
You
touchdown?
were here.
Where was I?
You were here, I think.
Was I off?
No, right. I think you were here.
No, I've seen the video. It's miraculous. And all the boys are asking her out for dates, and she says no to all the boys.
Yeah, she is.
Too, which I love. Yeah. Okay, 30 seconds left. My producer is telling me, so I want to stick to it. But I think the big winner this weekend, Joe Biden, the Democrats, the USA Today. Kelly, I'm sure you saw this. Jill Lawrence for USA Today writing an article about, so last week Joe Biden forgets Jackie Walorski as he's looking for a dead woman in the crowd. And they say this is a sign of Joe Biden's decency. And I'm scratching my head. I credit Mark Halperin for this take. But if Donald Trump or Ronald Reagan mistakenly called out a dead person who was apparently top of mind, do you think any of the newspapers would suggest it was a sign of his big heart? That is a W for Joe Biden ahead of the midterm elections. Okay, we will do What Are You Watching For this week, next hour. Kelly Sadler, Rick Gates, thank you. Alex? And Allison?
Allison.
Yes,
thanks,
Allison.
All right, well, the Biden administration is pressuring Israel to hand billions of dollars in oil-rich land to Lebanon, an Iranian-backed country that doesn't recognize Israel's existence. Our Newsmax Jerusalem correspondent Daniel Cohen joins us live from Tel Aviv with more on the dangers of this potential deal. Good morning, Daniel.
Hey, good morning, Allison, and good morning, everyone. Critics are blasting Israel's caretaker prime minister for welcoming a U.S.-brokered offshore energy deal that would pump billions of dollars into Lebanon's struggling economy. Conservatives are accusing Yair Lapid of capitulating to Hezbollah in order to keep peace just weeks before elections.
Caretaker Prime Minister Yair Lapid, meeting with his cabinet Sunday, says Israel welcomes a Biden administration border plan that could lead to profit sharing from future gas production by Lebanon. This deal strengthens Israel's security and Israel's economy without any discussion. Yair Lapid shamefully surrendered to Nasrallah's threats. He does it without a debate in the Knesset and without a referendum.
The United States is making Israel do something which, if an American did it, it would be considered material support of terrorism.
Professor Eugene Kontorovich from the Kohelet Policy Forum, Israel's largest think tank. In a new op-ed published in Newsweek, he criticized the Biden administration for egging on Israel's interim government to do an unconstitutional deal with the Iranian puppet state.
Lapid knows that if Hezbollah attacks those while he's in charge of a caretaker government weeks before the election, his chances are sunk. So he is buying off Hezbollah.
Hezbollah receives over $100 million a year from Iran. The militant group is a terror proxy, an ally of Islamic Jihad. Kontorovich says just like President Biden's forced Iran nuclear deal, this deal is also terrible for the U.S.
This is a direct concession to Iran. Just at the time when we should be pressuring Iran, it's bailing out an Iranian proxy state with gas at Israel's expense.
Details of the deal haven't been made public. However, Lapid says he's also open to Beirut developing an additional Lebanese field straddling the border as long as Israel receives royalties. With Israeli elections November 1st, there's enormous pressure on Lapid to get this done fast. Regardless, Netanyahu says if he returns as prime minister in a few weeks, any agreement by this caretaker government won't be recognized. Allison?
All right, Daniel Cohen, thank you so much. And here's Alex with what to watch for today.
Thanks, Allison. Well, President Biden heads to Puerto Rico, where he will meet with Hurricane Fiona victims and announce more than $60 million in infrastructure funding to help the island guard against future storms. The president will be in Florida on Wednesday with recovery efforts underway after Hurricane Ian. And the Supreme Court opens its new term today with a new member, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. They have another high-profile and contentious case docket, which includes college admissions, political redistricting, and big implications for businesses. And Treasury Secretary Yellen hosts a Financial Stability Council meeting to provide comprehensive oversight over the U.S.
Today, with several big cases on the docket covering a range of issues, including race, LGBTQ rights, and the environment. For more on that, let's welcome in constitutional law